I woke up to the sound of something sprinting past my tent. Heavy, fast, and too close. I thought I was alone in the wilderness. But something out there was breathing hard, circling. Before we start, where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments. It was supposed to be a quiet trip. 4 of us, just friends looking to disconnect, loaded up our gear and set out on a 4-day canoe run down one of the remote rivers in Victoria, Australia. No roads, no ranger stations, no nearby towns. Just us, our canoes, and the kind of wild that doesn't care whether you make it back or not. The first 2 days were easy. The river flowed smooth, the air stayed warm, and at night we'd pull into a clearing by the bank, set up our tents, light a fire, and talk until the stars faded behind the tree line. We had the kind of laughs that only come when you've got nowhere to be and no signal to remind you that the rest of the world is still out there. Everything about it felt good, real, uncomplicated. By the 3rd day, we'd covered a lot of distance. That night, we pulled into a spot that barely looked like a campsite. It wasn't marked on any map. You wouldn't even know it existed if you weren't coming in from the water. It was quiet, overgrown, and cut off from anything man-made. We liked that. It felt like a reward for going that far. We unloaded the canoes, set up the tents, and stretched out for a while under the fading sun. There was no rush. No agenda. Just the thought of firewood, maybe dinner, and eventually sleep. At the time, I remember thinking how peaceful it all was. That kind of peace that only comes when you're far enough away from everything to forget it even exists. I had no idea how different that night would be. After the tents were pitched and the gear stashed away, one of the girls, Sophie, nudged me and asked if I'd help her look for firewood. The others were sorting out dinner stuff, so we figured we'd take a short walk and see what we could scrounge up before dark. We weren't expecting much, maybe a few dry branches, kindling if we were lucky. We headed off down this narrow little trail that looked like it had been used by animals more than people. The bush out there was thick, but it wasn't quiet. You could still hear birds going off in the distance and that low hum of insects that never really stops. We were maybe 10 minutes in when we both caught it at the same time. The smell. It hit like a wave. Thick. Sour. Something between rotting meat and wet dog, but worse. It made you want to breathe through your shirt, only your shirt didn't help. We looked at each other, both pausing mid-step. She said, "God, what is that?" And I didn't have an answer. It didn't feel like it came from one direction. It was just around us, in the air, in our hair, clinging to the inside of your nose. Like the smell had weight to it. We kept walking, half thinking we'd stumble across a dead kangaroo or some poor wombat that didn't make it. I remember saying something dumb, like, maybe something dragged a carcass out here. Sophie didn't laugh. She just kept walking, slower now. Then we saw it. This mound off to the side of the trail. It didn't look natural. The way the sticks and branches were piled up, it wasn't random. It looked built. Thrown together with a kind of rush. Like someone, or something, had tried to cover something quickly. Neither of us said anything for a moment. We just stared at it. Then she stepped a little closer and nudged one of the top branches off with her shoe. I didn't stop her. I should've. The smell got stronger, like it had been trapped inside that pile and we just cracked it open. I squatted down next to it and gently peeled away a few more layers with a stick. I honestly thought I was about to see fur. Or something worse. There was nothing. Just dirt and old leaves and a few dry bones that looked like they belonged to a bird or something small. We stood there for another minute, not sure what to make of it. Sophie finally shook her head and said, "Dead roo probably. Dragged off and half buried. Let's just go." So we did. We left the pile, and the smell, and walked back in silence for a while. Then one of us made a joke about zombie kangaroos or something ridiculous like that, and we forced a laugh, hoping it would shake off whatever weird energy had settled over us. Back at camp, the other 2 had the fire going. We tossed the wood down, didn't say much about what we saw. Just told them it stunk out there and to maybe avoid that trail. They laughed and said it must have been roadkill, even though there weren't any roads anywhere near us. That night we sat around the fire, roasting marshmallows and trying to feel normal again. And for the most part, we did. We talked nonsense, played music off someone's old speaker, and stared up at the stars like they were the safest things in the world. Still, every now and then, I'd catch Sophie glancing toward the tree line. She was thinking about that pile. So was I. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but it wasn't the usual rustling of trees or the calls of night birds that did it. It was this sound, deep and guttural. Like a cough, but not quite. Rough, short bursts that didn't sound human. And didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard either. It wasn't far. It was close. Too close. I lay there, still in my sleeping bag, listening. The cough came again. Short, wet, then silence. I thought maybe one of the girls had gotten up and was choking on smoke or something. Maybe someone had gotten sick. I waited, hoping I'd hear a zipper or a voice or something that would explain it. Instead, I heard running. Fast. Heavy. It came from the left and tore through the center of our camp like it had somewhere to be. You could hear the weight of it, whatever it was, pounding the dirt, kicking up gravel, maybe even brushing against one of the tents. And then nothing. No slowing down. No retreat. Just gone. That's when the dread hit. We were completely isolated. Water access only. There wasn't a single road, driveway, or hiking trail within miles. No ranger posts. No other campers. It was just us. We had paddled in, and we'd have to paddle out. And now something was out there, circling our tents in the dark, running through our camp like it belonged there. I didn't move. I barely breathed. My mind was running through every possibility I didn't want to consider. What if someone followed us in? What if we had come across something we weren't meant to see earlier that day? That pile. That smell. Maybe we'd interrupted something. Disturbed it. And just like that, the smell returned. Thick and sour, but sharper now. Like it had been dragged across the camp and left to hang in the air. It was stronger than it had been earlier. No more guessing where it came from. It was here. It was outside my tent. I wanted to call out. I wanted to ask if anyone else was awake. But the thought of making a sound froze me more than the cold ever could. I lay there with my eyes wide open in the dark, waiting to hear the zipper of my tent being pulled down. I actually started rehearsing what I'd do if it happened. If someone tried to come in. If I had to fight. And then, slowly, I reached for the headlamp by my side. My fingers shook. I didn't want the noise, so I didn't unzip the sleeping bag. I just pushed myself toward the edge of the tent and moved my hand toward the zipper, 1 inch at a time. Every movement felt like a gamble. When I finally started to pull the zipper down, I did it slow enough that I could hear every single tooth let go of the one above it. I expected something, anything, to crash through at me. Nothing. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Maybe more. I switched on the light. Silence. No coughing. No footsteps. No wind. The forest was quiet in a way that didn't feel earned. It was the kind of quiet that had weight to it. No birds. No crickets. Just me, my breathing, and whatever had been out there a few seconds ago. I aimed the beam through the mesh. The light cut across the camp and landed on something that made no sense at all. Eyes. Dozens of them. Pairs of tiny glowing eyes scattered everywhere. Up in the trees, on the ground, behind our cooking gear. Phil. Watching. And in that frozen moment, my brain finally caught up to what I was looking at. Possums. Huge, bulky possums. One was chewing something. Another waddled across the site like it owned the place. One climbed a tent pole and leapt off with the grace of a drunk cat. They were raiding our leftovers. Our marshmallows. All of them. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I didn't even feel relief. I just sat there, stunned. Because for a few terrifying minutes, I thought I wasn't going to make it out of that tent alive. And all the while, it was a bunch of overfed possums having a late-night party. But I'll tell you this, I never found where that smell was coming from. And to this day, I'm still not convinced it was all just possums. I thought I was seeing things at first. My light hit the trees, and suddenly the whole place lit up with eyes. Dozens of them. Tiny, glassy dots, all reflecting back at me. Some were high, some low, some sitting just beyond the fire pit, motionless, like statues in the dark. I didn't blink. I couldn't. They weren't blinking either. It was as if I'd disturbed a meeting, and now every single one of them had turned to look. I slowly swept the beam across the camp, and more eyes popped into view. 1 pair, then 3, then 10, then 20. They were up in the branches, behind our bags, on the edge of the tents, just waiting. And then all hell broke loose. Out of nowhere, they started scrambling. One leapt from a branch and landed with a thud right near the fire pit. Another darted between the tents, dragging something white and sticky in its mouth. It was marshmallows. One of them had an entire bag, tearing it open with a sound that was way too aggressive for its size. Another hissed, an actual loud hiss, at a smaller one trying to get in on the loot. That one lunged, they rolled, they tumbled. Screeching, snapping, a full-on brawl. Possums. Big, wild, brush-tail possums. And not just a few, this was a mob. They weren't shy. They weren't afraid. They were marching in like they'd done this before. One of them climbed onto our cooler and pawed at it like it had the code. Another ran right up to the edge of my tent and stared me down like it was daring me to do something about it. They were everywhere, clawing through wrappers, chasing each other, falling out of trees, stealing whatever they could get. I just sat there, light still on, mouth probably wide open, watching the chaos unfold like some kind of backwoods wildlife documentary, except it was happening 5 feet away. It was loud, it was messy, it was absolutely ridiculous. Marshmallows flying, squeals echoing, one of them dragging a whole bag like it had won the lottery. And that's when it hit me. All that fear. All that tension. The coughing, the thudding steps, the stench in the air. I had built up this idea of something stalking us, some silent figure watching, waiting. I had imagined something far worse. Turns out, we weren't being hunted. We were being looted. Ambushed by sugar-crazed possums who probably knew campers meant snacks. It was a junk food turf war. A brushtail riot. But in that moment, it wasn't funny. It wasn't even annoying. It was wild. It felt like the forest had come alive and decided we owed it something. And we paid in marshmallows. I didn't sleep after that. I tried. I closed my eyes, lay back down, even zipped the tent up halfway like that would make a difference. But my ears stayed on. Every little rustle made me twitch. Every crunch in the brush had me wide awake again, clutching the light. The possums eventually quieted down. One by one, they disappeared into the trees like ghosts melting into the leaves. But the quiet didn't feel peaceful. It just felt like they were waiting for round 2. The girls slept like nothing happened. All 3 of them, dead to the world. I kept glancing at their tents, half expecting someone to pop out and say, "Did you hear that?" But nothing. Not a peep. I was the only one who saw it, the only one who heard that weird cough, who watched possums ransack a campsite like they were pulling off a coordinated heist. By morning, it looked like a storm had come through. Food wrappers shredded everywhere. Our cooking pot had rolled halfway into the trees. There were muddy little footprints over the tents, through the ashes, across the side of someone's sleeping bag. A plastic bag that used to hold our bread was hanging from a branch like a sad, white flag. They laughed when I told them. Thought I'd had a sugar dream or something. One of them said I probably spooked myself, imagining it all. But the evidence was right there in the dirt. They just didn't want to believe it. I didn't argue. But I kept thinking about that smell. We never found it again. It vanished with the night. And that mound? The one we thought might be covering something? No one wanted to go back and check. We joked that it was probably a dead kangaroo and left it at that. But sometimes I wonder, what if it wasn't? What if we uncovered part of something and didn't realize it? We packed up quick, ate dry granola bars for breakfast and paddled out before noon. That trip was supposed to be one of those lifelong memories, the kind you talk about over drinks years later. And it was. Just not in the way any of us expected. I haven't been camping since. I tell people I'm too busy or that I've outgrown it. But truth is, I just don't trust the silence out there anymore. Possums don't build stick mounds. And they definitely don't smell like rotting flesh. So whatever we found out there, I don't think it was them. If you've ever had a terrifying encounter in the wild, or think you know what we really found that night, drop it in the comments. I might feature your story next.